All right, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Salomé MC.
به افروای سفته و امیر برتنم به رسوایی که از ما کهن‌ترم یاله 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 فردا سر میدم فردا سر به پرماسایی که از لفظ را بیترم به خندایی که از ما بیترم به لحظه وایی که از ما باقی ترم سرمو میدم فردا با هی دلا هی فردا با هی دلا هی فردا با هی دلا هی باز میشه دلا باز دلا باز میشه با دیده بال شکسته ترمیم نمیشه زمان گذشته تمدید نمیشه دل بنشین لحظه ای تو گوشه بشنوم حرفای اگه جز به نرمی حرفامو بزنم زنندم اگه باب میل صاحبا نباشه روندم ناپسندم شمشیرم بایدم در غلافش باشه تا زندم چرا که سرخراشه زنی که نکنه خمسر به خواسته پدر برادرم سرم کلاس ولی فردا میشه پرده گناه اسبابی زین سوی وفق به اتاز بزا به ترکه حباب آلایش بزا میارزه واسه لحظه فردا و هی دلا هی فردا و هی دلا هی فردا و هی دلا هی باز میشه دلا باز میشه با دیده Thank you so much for listening. I'm Salomé MC, and that song was Khiyal or Phantasm from my latest album, Nakhoshaga, or Excerpts from Unhappy Consciousness. The English name is kind of long. I have another song coming out, but before that, I also have a short animation that I made a couple of years ago, so please enjoy. ایستادم دستی روی سرم میخوانه رکایتی از خاری دختی که آمد دادانویم من نیست این کهنه لباس سفید روزه باد بوسه میچکچک بارون الف الف به نام مقابله به منظره برت قافله بزن 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 از این غروب دیگه نیست پایین‌تر از این خروج دیگه نیست بالین‌تر قلبی شکست و غروری به فاک رفت مغزی به رشناک کف پشت صافتر یکی بود یکی نبود قصه به خوش شد یکی زد یکی خورد خیال قبول شد خیال قبول شد ایستادم با داغی رو سینم از قلب دریدم مجاور تیغم شاهرگ کندیم زاویه من نیست دیگر هیچ غیره می سلا بخرید از این اختر را رفاقت گرگان و آتشه الف الف به نام مقابله به منظره برت قافله بزن 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 Make sure to take notes, there's going to be a test afterwards. من تو کافتی کودک من ضربوری رندختی نمیبخشم ولی فراموش میکنم جای گیره رباقی در آغوش میکنم من نگینم نیست باسم شنگیدم. Okay, I want you to try and sing the next chorus with me, the bezan part, okay? It's just 2 syllables. Bezan, bezan, bezan. So it's gonna come right out. Hazarde shakafi Javid bar khirqe که ایمو سرو قماشه باورم یک بار دیگه بزن و میشکنم فردا اگر من بمیرم کسی نخواهد دانست مادرم رسواتر از من پدرم از کافه الف الف به نام مقابله به منظره برت قافله بزن 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 yeah there's gonna be another one coming right up بزن 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 okay 2 more to go بزن 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 thank you one last time بزن 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 فردا شاید بمیرم یاله 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 عاقبتم ببینم کاله 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 Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Salomé MC, right here in New Haven. Yay!
That's right. New Haven.
That's first fact. How did you become a rap girl?
I tied my scarf that way, and I was a rap girl. So this goes back. So my father was a journalist. He's retired now, but at the time when I was my early teen years, 11, 12, we were living in Azerbaijan, Baku. He was a journalist for Iranian. If you're familiar with it, but it's the official news agency in Iran. And in there, and our family is Turk, Azeri, so I was watching a lot of Turkish TV, I think back then a lot of Iranians did. There was this Turkish hip-hop group called Cartel. Their album came out in '95. That was the first hip hop I was ever exposed to. They had a music video out. It was constantly showing on Turkish music channels, and I loved it. And this was a German group that lived in the Turkish group that were living in German-Turkish diaspora. Mm-hmm. And their music really spoke to me. I think a part of it was because I was living in Azerbaijan. I was small though, but somehow I connected. And following up on that, I just kept listening to hip-hop, American hip-hop, which, you know, I tried to find. It was mostly conscious hip-hop, so I never really listened to mainstream American hip-hop, but really good hip-hop. And I was lucky that I was given that kind of things, kind of just, yeah, and eventually I was writing my own stuff.
Do you remember the very first piece that you wrote?
Yeah, but let's not talk about it. I don't want to remember the, you know, first 50 things that I wrote. But how, if we want to talk about how I actually recorded a song, that goes back to, so I had this blog about hip-hop. And it's funny, I kind of thought of talking about this when, I think it was Dr. Shea that talked about Quran. Is it music, when you're, you know, reading it with sot? And this was one of the things that I was writing in my blog, and I'm like 16. But I was like, Quran is actually rap. The way it rhymes, you can actually rhyme it. As a, you know, and it was like, you know, I was making arguments like that in my blog, and I was really serious about it. And back then also there was this website called Orkut, which was for social, it was a, you know, before Facebook, and a lot of Iranians hung out in there. And we had this Iranian hip-hop enthusiasts kind of hanging out and talking about rap.
Where Hitchcast and those, he mentioned
yeah, that's where
as well. He was,
yeah, that's where we met
as well.
Actually, how it happened is, how I met him wasn't through Orkut necessarily, but there was this website called selfmistakemusic.com, which was the only website that had hip-hop music on it. Hitchcast's songs were in there, and I was listening to them. And I sent an email there. I said, I have this blog, you know, I wrote about hip-hop. If you put the link in there, it'll be great. And they got back to me, and it was Hitchcast, apparently. I didn't know that he ran the website, but he's like, oh yeah, let's meet up. And we talked a little bit, and at first he didn't even know I was a girl, so he was shocked when he actually found out. And he used this, and that, like, I wasn't really in the, like, Iranian street culture back then. I was pretty sheltered, I can say. So, like, with them, hanging out with them, I was exposed. But I remember very specifically that when he first found out that I was a girl, he said, "Pashmam riq dokhtar," and I was like, and I didn't, and that was like, I learned from those guys about all these, you know, these strict terms, and that was one of those. But and you know, I was so innocent that they would say certain things that I wouldn't know the real, like the literal meaning, because they would use them as you know, phrases. So I don't know if I can use certain words here, but I wouldn't know. So I would go back and use them, you know, with my father, and he would be like, "Don't say that again." Do you even know what you're saying? I'm like, no.
You tell me.
Yeah.
So, if not your very first track, what was the first track that you were proud of?
I was proud of all my songs when I first made them, and then I was not proud of them after a few weeks. But I think that kind of insatisfaction makes you want to continue doing it. And over the years, I talked to a lot of artists, and everyone has it, so I'm good, because I thought I was, you know, crazy, but apparently that's normal. Yeah, so the first song that I was actually proud of, because the first song I ever recorded was with Hitchcast, so you probably know that. We made a collaboration together, and I tried a lot to make that song disappear from the internet, but unfortunately those days are long gone. So it's still out there, but the first song that I was really proud of was the song that I made by myself, because after working with Hitchcast, it was really clear to me that I want to be independent. Because those guys, they're really nice, but they could get a little bit controlling. And I really wanted to be my own self. So I was kind of separated myself from that the main wave that was happening back then, and went my own way. I would just download beats made, like free beats that were made by American producers, and rap on them. And my first song, Hajve Shomare Yek, that I'm really proud of because I'm completely made by myself without, the recording and everything. I didn't need any guidance, and I was really happy with it.
You put it together in your bedroom?
No. So that was I didn't have, no, this is way before that, before I had my own studio. Mm-hmm. I was still going to studios. The government crackdown hasn't happened yet, so we could go to studios. There was this studio called Kargadan, you probably heard of, because it's one of the main places that a lot of underground music was recorded. And actually the Kaveh Ramazanzadeh, who was the sound engineer in there, he was also my teacher, because I was learning singing too with him. So I was going to Kargadan a lot and recorded that song there. And because you were going to studios and you're gonna pay for hourly, so we would practice a lot before going to make sure that we can record it in one take and maybe do a little bit of corrections afterwards. So it was different times. Because now I have a home studio, I don't even memorize my lyrics. Got lazy, but.
I want to know a little bit about, since we've been talking about sort of, women musicians and so, I want to know a little bit about, do you want to move a little closer? Sure. So far away. I want to know a little bit about what it meant to be, a young girl making, getting into hip-hop music back then in Iran. So you said in your encounter with Hichkas and his troupe, you sort of realized sort of where you stood, and that became clearer to you, and you wanted to do your things independently. But was it actually a big deal, or how did it affect you being, in terms of going to the studios? Did people, deal with you differently? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I didn't notice anything. I don't know if I was naive. Maybe people did react differently. I remember the first song we recorded with Hichkas, and there was a little big group then, everyone, and I still remember everyone's faces behind the glass in the studio. There was Mehrak Rubil, who's also one of the people who had a big influence in the early days of hip-hop in Iran. And the guys in the studio, like Kaveh Ramazanzadeh and Surush was there. And they were all kind of looking really in awe, but that was my first experience in studios. I assumed that, that's how it worked. But then when we got out of the studio, Mehrak, we were waiting for taxi, and Mehrak said, do you know this day is historical? I was like, why are you telling me that? And he's
do you know what?
He said, do you know this day is a historical day? I was like, I don't know. Then he explained, because he was, back then, I think he was doing his master's in musicology or something, so he he looked at things a little bit differently. I don't know if it was afterwards, maybe it was a little bit later, but I think he was looking at things in that way. I didn't. It took me a long time to look at things differently, kind of just being in them, and he kind of was saying that that's an important step. But I didn't, so a lot of things I wouldn't notice. I would just do them, because I was also, even before starting rapping, I was doing graffiti. And that was also a thing that I didn't even think that I'm doing something that weird. But later on, people would tell me, oh, do you know this is crazy? I'm like, I guess, I don't know. Is it crazy?
What about the response and feedback you'd get online? Because
yeah, so that's another thing. Because in the early days, also, we didn't have big groups following us. And I think everyone was kind of in it. And there were a lot of girls also who followed. And it was, I think, mostly encouraging environment. I didn't see anything weird from anyone. I remember, though, there was also this thing, there was other groups, there were different groups, and they would kind of make these diss tracks. This is a whole different world that I wasn't a part of, but, they would make songs and maybe target me, and the way they would insult everyone, but the way they would insult me would be the way you would insult a woman, the way you would shame a woman, which, that's my song kind of pointing out. So the sexism in there could be kind of seen.
And what about live performances in Iran when you were starting your career?
So that's another interesting point that I won't make right now. And it's probably going to be a little bit news to a lot of you, but I didn't grow up listening to music live. The way we listened to music and loved music, and the way I loved hip-hop too. These tapes, copied maybe 10 times. We'd sit in the bedroom and in the headphones, really crappy quality. And I loved it. It was my whole world. That's how I loved music. And still to this day, when I make music, I make it for people who listen to it in their bedrooms in headphones. I do, and it's one of those things. And eventually, obviously, I realized, I guess we can have a live performance. But that was never, when I started, it wasn't even in my mind. It wasn't my radar. It wasn't in anyone's radar. And another interesting tidbit, the first rap performance, I guess, that happened in Iran was in Danishgah Shahid Beheshti. It was a conference, you know about that one? It was a conference about the side effects or negative sides of smoking, or something like that, I guess. And Surush and a couple of guys, they made the song about cigar nakesh. I don't remember exactly what it was, but and I remember this conversation between us that we were like kind of just before that whole thing happened. It was a big deal. But we were kind of talking, should I go in the stage too, and kind of in the back, do the same, because there were so many people on the stage, and they were all like saying cigar nakesh. I was like, I can go too, but they're like, no, my dad will kill me. That was the only thing on my mind. I didn't even think, the government is gonna stop me. That wasn't even on the radar. I just thought, my dad, if you find that, is gonna kill me.
How old were you at this point?
19.
19, yeah.
Yeah, so I wasn't that young, but I was. Especially, I was a little bit of a shelter too. But at this point, and with my dad and my family, how it all worked out was also interesting, because I said, okay, I'm going to stop making hip hop, and I had to tell them, because every time I went out, I had to tell them where I'm going, and I'm 18. My dad was like, okay, so where are you going? The studio, where is this? Who are you going with? And I had to introduce him to Hichkas and Surush, and he had to talk to him for a whole hour, and it's like, okay. And Surush could be really good in front of parents. He looked
like Basiji, so
definitely. He was like, okay, with this guy, I can go anywhere. It's fine. My dad was completely fine with it. That's how it worked out. But yeah, performing wasn't on my radar. And even after I left Iran to pursue my education in Japan, I considered that, maybe I can be more performative now. But there was another problem then, the language, because I'm in a new environment. People don't know what I'm saying. I'm not going to do Persian hip-hop in there. So I started making video art, and I got into the art world, basically. And kind of since then, I've been going back and forth, I devote a year for art, and then I do an album, and then go back and do an art residency somewhere and do a little bit more video. So it's been like that. It's still not much on my radar. I perform every now and then like this, but...
Did you ever engage in any rap battles in Park of Urbalu or something?
I would go, but I was not big in battles. I would write my lyrics, I would think about them. And back then, in my early teen years, I was really into philosophy. I was reading Nietzsche and all this. I would write a lot of heavy philosophical stuff. So I wasn't into just saying these really superficial and just that's a whole other different talent that you can have. And people who did them, I thought they were great, but I wasn't into it, because I wanted everything that came out of my mind to have meaning. And because I come from also, and I thought about it later, that why is it that way? Because I come from this, my family, my mom's a writer, my dad's a journalist, so I come from this tradition of writing and words meant something. And I don't come from a musical family. It's really more about the writing, and I cared about that a lot. I think I gave a lot of heaviness to my writing from the early days.
I want to open it up to the audience, if I may just ask one more question. You've been very cautious and aware of being politicized, and this has gone back for a long time. Could you talk a little bit about that? You have also created tracks that are political, Shah Hamasto, Sheikh Hamas, which...
Shah, Masto, Sheikh, Masto, Sheikh, no Masto, yeah.
Following the 2009, the Green Uprising. So you've also created political tracks, but your awareness or cautiousness about being politicized applies both sort of to the approach of sort of Western media toward you as a female rapper from Iran, and you've really tried to sort of keep a very independent line, and at times it's meant sort of saying no to, MTV's series, which is on YouTube and a lot of people watch, which, MTV is not, it's not a small deal, but you've managed to say no, like, I'm not going to be framed like that. Can you talk a little bit about where that comes from? Is that where does that awareness come from, and how has it been sort of difficult cultivating that sort of balance?
I talked about how I listened to, the early American hip-hop that I was listening was conscious hip-hop. I was listening to people like Immortal Technique and Dead Prez and...
Bush brought down the tower.
Yes, and Paris, Sonic Jihad album changed my life. So there's all this, from the early days I had this thing, and when I was, when I got into hip-hop, I already had that, kind of fight the system, fight the mainstream. I wasn't even necessarily thinking of Iranian government. I was thinking more global, just scale, like, the mainstream media, MTV is, destroying us, and then, entertainment industry is this. Like, I kind of had that outlook in a very strict way, kind of teenage way. It changed now, but I think that kind of kept me really skeptical and cynical about Western media. And actually Farzaneh, right here, we're talking about, because she was there during Intergalactic Music Festival about 10 years ago that happened in Amsterdam. That was the first music festival for Iranian underground music. And I kind of had a fight with this BBC reporter because he had a similar approach, wanted to kind of sensationalize things. Even then I was really apprehensive too, because I knew that, and also because my father was a journalist, I knew how journalism works. I knew how stories are made, and I didn't want to be used, I think. And that is in every level of my life. I just didn't want to be used. I didn't want to be used by media. I didn't want to be used by producers, or this rapper or that rapper. I kept that, as you said, kind of wanted to be independent from any of those side stories. So it's kind of kept my head down and did what I wanted to do.
Do you have a question before we want to go to that? Yeah. Okay. Wonderful.
Very interesting. Thank you for your comments and performance. My question is, where would you see yourself in 10 years from now?
I'm currently, I live, so last year I moved from Japan, I moved to Seattle with my husband, and I'm currently working with a nonprofit. Basically in Japan I started going to nonprofit route and kind of committing myself to certain causes that I liked, and this specific nonprofit that I'm working now with, Jack Straw organization, does basically sound projects for the community and a lot of oral history, education for children based on sound-based projects. Could be poetry, could be music, could be podcasts, and it's great. And so I'm doing sound engineering and videography, which was my day job in Japan, but now music, sound and video came all together, and I can work in there. And I really want to expand how we do things, like we write proposals and get grants for different projects and everything, and I have big projects in my mind. We're already talking about them. And that's one thing for my, my job. But also, if you want, when it comes to hip hop, and my relation to Iran, which I want to keep as long as I can. I'm in talks now with 2 girls who are rapping in Iran, and I want to be a producer for them because I've been producing for a while now, and we don't have female producers in Iran. I want to basically produce for these girls and kind of be a mentor and help them do things inside Iran. Because we don't have female producers, so they work with male producers, and I know from my early days how it can limit your creativity a lot if you're working with someone who even slightly their vision might be different from you. And I want them to have full freedom, so I want to offer that to girls with my newfound equipment that I have, because I work at a studio and I have some means to achieve that. So that's what I want to keep doing, hopefully, and also keep making albums. I like making albums in Farsi, and each album I made recently, I make them concept albums, and they kind of adhere to a certain era of my life or something. I tell a story through the whole album. And I want to keep doing that too. Next stage of my life, I don't know, it could be having kids or whatever, whatever that entails. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for everything. I have a question in regards to production, because you just talked about it. And I was wondering, what is your production process? What kind of equipment you have, and how much live music do you record? How much of it is electronic, and what kind of programs, all the backbone that nobody wants to talk about. Yeah. I want to know.
Yeah, definitely. I actually talk about it. I really like talking about it online too, if you follow me, because I know that, especially in Iran, because girls don't really have a role model for production. They don't even know that they can actually go out and produce, and it's not that hard, and you really don't need a lot of equipment for it. And I saved up when I first had my home studio. It was in Iran, and I really had just saved up a little bit and started really basic. But yeah, I have a sound card, and I have a MIDI controller. I have some percussions that I really like collecting percussion, so I can get different sounds. I record usually. I use, when I'm programming the beats for percussion section, I would record some live sounds and layer them with the programmed VSTs and audio units. I work with Logic. Yeah, but at the studio, at Jack's organization, we use Pro Tools, so I work with both of them. But at home, what I'm most comfortable with is Logic Pro. Yeah, so with percussions, usually I record live, but with instruments, if I find some, if I meet a musician that plays something, all right, I would be like, let's record something, and I will record something from them, and then try to use that as a sample and use it for my beat. It's nice because I play keyboard. I'm not an instrumentalist though, so I like, and if I find someone who plays an instrument really well, I try to take advantage of it and record. So I have a big archive of different sounds that I recorded over the years, and I use them. But yeah, I'm most comfortable just behind the computer and doing the digital production.
Thank you very much.
I think it's off.
All right. Sorry. Thank you. I have so many questions for you that I'm trying to decide where to start. But I want to go back to that point about media representation that Naeem brought up. I'm interested in your thoughts not only on the way that Iranian rap is portrayed in the media, but the way that Iranian rappers themselves interact with the Western media, let's say. And so I'm interested to know if you feel like this has also had an effect on how Iranian rap has been perceived in the international community, and what kind of effect maybe it's had.
I think inevitably that happens. I think each person have their own story, So we had musicians, rappers that, you know, they left Iran and then they wanted to, maybe they had really extreme experiences, so they really wanted to say extreme things about what happened back in Iran. I don't know, I can't speak for other people. Everyone's experience is their own. I didn't experience anything extreme, so I have my own story and that's what I tell. So I'm sure that, but it's true that the journalists, when they want to make a story, they go after people who would have extreme examples. They wouldn't, like, if journalists, they come talk to me, they're not going to get anything too sensational. But some people will give them that kind of information. But just, I think it was in your presentation, right? Like, if the story doesn't feed a certain narrative, it's not interesting to Western audience. So that's why the journalists go after that. Like, if the journalist comes and asks me, why did you go to Japan? And they want to hear that, oh, I left because of green movement and it was so oppressed and Ahmadinejad and it's just like so sad, they're gonna love it. But if I tell them, well, I got a scholarship from Japan and I wanted to do my master's, so I went, that's not interesting at all, but that's the real story. Why did you come to America? Well, my husband found a job here and just came. Boring story, but real.
St. James.
In Western traditions, we have three separate things: rap, hip hop, and spoken word.
James, we're recording, so can you try to speak in the mic?
It doesn't seem to be. Okay. In the Western tradition, we have three separate things. It's the rap, hip hop, and spoken word. And those people who are performers in those genres, they consider it very specifically different. And do you have the same distinctions within the Iranian genre?
Well, I think the impression we have is rap is the music, hip hop is more of a subculture, and you know it's also included within itself other elements of hip hop culture like graffiti, which I also did, and breakdancing, DJing. So hip hop. When you say hip hop music, people understand what it means, but it also has, you know, if you're talking about a more general sense and you say hip hop culture, people also know what you mean. So yeah, we had that. I think this was one of those early discussions that we were having. What is hip hop? What is rap? And you would write about those. But well, yeah, we would say, okay, yeah, hip hop is the culture. And
you have spoken word artists? Do you have spoken word artists? So people who call themselves spoken word artists, or that's something that's
we have similar things in Iran. We've had, I think, it's not named spoken word, but we had deklam khuni, and we had this tradition of, you know, oral storytelling since long time ago. So it's not necessarily spoken word as in like slam poetry or anything like that, but I'm sure we have now, you know, people who specifically name it that. But if you say spoken word, I guess it depends on what you mean. But I think
Salomé is usually reading something that's been written down.
Yeah.
And the spoken word performers in the West, anyway, they don't actually read anything. They just.
But it can be pre-written. You can just perform it, but it can be something that they wrote before. It doesn't have to be improvised with spoken word. So it's similar to. And you know, in Iran we have, I think we have things like similar to spoken word, but I don't know of any specific moment that is spoken word as in the American, like imported from America.
Can you speak a little bit about the subculture or, you know, the hip hop culture that you're referring to? So in your late teens and early 20s, being part of that culture in Iran, what did it mean? Who else was part of it? You know, what was its? Was there any sort of political directionality? No. Was it just sort of a way of being young in the world and connecting to sort of other, you know, this global culture of hip hop? Did you have any awareness of any of that? Can you just speak a little bit about what it meant to be part of that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it was like teenage rebellion. it just was good to I was writing graffiti, and there was this graffiti scene. One of the forefathers of graffiti, Alone, Tehran, in Tehran. He was my mentor, and he created beautiful pieces, and some of his pieces were political. My pieces weren't, though. I just liked making this nicely shaped fonts with my name. I wrote Salomé on the walls, and I actually usually ask for permission. Like at my school, university, at the back there was this car wash, and I asked them, "Can I get paint over your wall?" And they said, "Okay." It's already very dirty anyway. It's not going to make a difference, you know. So my graffiti writing was that kind of experience. But I think, you know, people like me who were early teenagers, like other people who did graffiti, like Kayvon, and a few others. I think most of it was just, you know, that energy that you had as a young person, and you wanted to express it and kind of feel a little bit, you know, in the edge, and kind of feeling like you're doing something that's different from the rest of the society. But Alone, who was kind of older than us, he did have political pieces. Mm-hmm. So I think there were different people who did differently. And then there was this guys who did, you know, skateboarding in Parc Bourg-Barré, and they also considered themselves as this part of, you know, hip hop culture. And I think they weren't really that political either. They were just kind of being young and edgy.
Mm-hmm. And how did this, as far as you were part of it, how did this scene come together? Can you talk a little bit about its publicness, or whether being oftentimes in private spaces, how that affected what it meant, you know, the constitutionality of this group and this scene?
I think in the early days we didn't really think of it as a scene. It became a scene afterwards, looking back. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it actually was a scene or what that means. Mm-hmm. I think we just came together, people who had similar interests, kind of supported each other and hung out together, did things. We didn't necessarily think, oh, we're creating a movement, or oh, we're influencing the society. We weren't really thinking that. Now, I don't want to generalize, I'm just going to speak for myself, but I think that's how others saw it too. Mm-hmm. But you know, we were putting things out there. So when I made a graffiti, I put I took a picture and put it online. When I made a song, I put it online. So that they went and became their own thing. Mm-hmm. I didn't necessarily did all of these to create a movement, and I don't know if the other guys were, you know, aware of it and they did it intentionally, but I doubt it. Mm-hmm. So it was really just being together, having that common interests, and the sense of community was big. A lot of it was online, but then we got to hang out in parks mostly.
What was how many women were part of this early on?
There were a few, actually, quite a few. There was one of the first women that I ever met is one of my best friends currently, Maral. She wanted to meet up with me and beat me up. So that was, you know, we were that young. That's how it was. And then we met up, and then we talked, and she's like, "Oh, you're so different from what I thought." And yeah, there were girls, and we were all like just young and trying to be different and express ourselves the way we felt different. We wanted to express it and feel like we are different. Maybe
how did your community evolve from that point on? Like now, how do you view your community in a way?
Yeah, it's really changed. Things are very different now. That early sense of community doesn't exist anymore because it blew and it turned into something else. It mutated. It became a scene, and then later it was a movement, then it was a whole thing. And there's now the third generation of musicians. There are amazing graffiti artists out there. So yeah, it's different now, definitely, and that sense of community doesn't exist much because a lot of competition has started. We didn't really compete. We were all kind of all together helping each other, but now there's all these different people, And it's understandable because the competition happens naturally because you want to put your song out there and you want it to be heard, and you want to try to be different, and so that naturally happens, that this competitiveness. But it also creates the sense in the people who want to start that they're not going to make it, so they give up. So I meet a lot of girls like that. So there are many girls, but there are a lot of girls who want to do it, and they email me, and I try to guide them, but. It's not like the early days that you could just do it and not even think, that you just automatically had audience. Everyone was each other's audience. It's not like that anymore because there are millions of listeners and there are thousands of singers, and it's hard to separate yourself and rise.
We can only take a few more questions, and I want to go to the person back. You have the microphone already, or okay?
Yeah. Right. So I have an American question, which is, if you could collaborate with any American female hip-hop artist, who would it be and why?
Good question. So I listen to a lot of, the hip-hop that I listen is mostly from 90s America. So I really liked early female MCs like Salt and Pepper. I don't know much about what's happening currently. So, I love Lauryn Hill. If I can collaborate with her, it will be my dream. But I think anyone would be great. Like people who share the similar, if I find someone and meet someone who shares a similar values and similar worldview, I would love to collaborate. But yeah, Lauryn Hill, she's great. But she won't collaborate, I don't think.
I think, is that Alex or? Okay, great, yeah, she's handing down the mic.
How does this work?
It should be on.
Oh, hi. Do you ever rap in Azeri, Farsi, English, and Japanese and mix them up?
Yeah.
Quite a bit.
So early days I did rap in Azeri. I have a song about naft. But anyway, that was one of the songs that I successfully erased off the internet.
What was so bad about it?
It wasn't really coherent, and it was a collaboration with a Turkish rapper, and we were just so off. We were talking about different things, and I was still trying to understand Turkish and how it works, structurally, for rapping, and it just didn't work out. But anyway, yeah, I did try with Azeri, and with Japanese. I never got, my Japanese level, never got to a level where I can comfortably write what I actually want to say. So I never got there, but I did collaborate with a Japanese rapper, hip-hop artist, Shingo too. And I do one sentence in Japanese, which is a sentence from one of my favorite Japanese poets, Matsuo Basho. Kimi tabi nishite tabi yo subikatosu. Yeah, it was like, every day is a journey, and the journey itself is home. That's the meaning of that verse. So I used that. I said only that. And English, in my latest album, I have some English verses, naturally. And I think, I finished this album, and my albums always have this latency. They're about what happened to maybe before, the last 3 years or 4 years or something. So this album that I released in August, Nakhoshoga, is basically covers my life in Japan, and I'm making the third and last music video for it currently. There are 2 music videos out there already, so if you watch them, one of them is actually made by Tanha, or Alone, who's one of the pioneers of street art in Iran. So it's really great stop motion music video. Please watch it. I'm making the third music video, and I'm then gonna be done with this album, and then I'm gonna look and see what I want to do. And I think there's a good chance that I'm gonna do something heavily English, just naturally because I'm living here and I'm absorbing a lot. downloading a lot of things currently, just, you know, into my world. So that's, I think, naturally going to happen. But yeah, I already did English stuff in my new album.
But you never do both together, say Azeri and Farsi in one song?
Well, I did English and Farsi in one song. And I did, with the Japanese, I did that one sentence with Farsi, Japanese, and then Shingo does English. But yeah. But Azeri and Farsi together, I didn't. It's a good idea. I want to do something Azeri, because my Azeri is not that great. It's good, but you know, my dad is from Urmiye, so every time we went there, and I want to like talk to everyone. And I always was a little bit self-conscious because I do have an accent in Azeri, so I don't know if I can, you know, use it in the best way. I want to though, because it's part of my heritage, and I think Azeri is a really beautiful language. So I'll definitely want to do that. That's in the plans.
Perhaps we make that the last question.
I was just curious about having spent so much time outside of your native country and your countries. How you understand your relationship now to Iran, to Azerbaijan, and
well, with Iran, it's complicated because when I went to Japan, I got a scholarship. You know, I did, and the plan was I'm gonna get my master's and go back and teach. And actually, my professor at school kind of pushed me to get the scholarship, and she was like, "Well, you're gonna come back and teach." And she loved me because I basically translated a book in her name that was published, but that's academia in Iran. So I went there, but then things didn't, you know, went according to plan. So, you know, I got married and stayed and worked in Japan, and I kept thinking, okay, I guess it's, you know, I'm out of Iran now. Like why? Thought about it, like why continue making music in Farsi? And one of the answers was, okay, I'm going into the art world and tell my story as in the form of video and sound art, and stop making it. But then I have a connection in the form of my audience, because I have a fan base. It's not big, but they're really devoted and they ask for things, and they're really insistent. And I feel a responsibility. Like, I released an album 4 months ago, and people already are like, "Why aren't you giving any new songs?" I'm like, I released an album. Did you know that? It's like, yeah, that was 4 months ago. People demand things. And I feel responsibility, and I feel it really excites me. Their excitement excites me, and then I want to tell more stories in Farsi. And it's kind of became this thing. So I'm connected through them to Iran. But the way I tell stories change now. They become a lot more personal and a lot more global. Like this album, like the songs you watched, maybe you looked at it from, Iranian government oppressions. But it wasn't that. It's my experiences in Japan and generally about patriarchal societies. And it can conform to anywhere. Like it can be America, the stories that I told. So, you know, it becomes, I can't talk for, you know, what's life like in Iran anymore. When I was in Iran, I made songs about socio-political situations, but I don't anymore because I don't have the similar sense that I did when I was in there. I can read news, I can listen to people, but I can't talk candidly about it. So I just talk of my own experiences. That's what I did in Iran too. I talked of my own experiences. So, and hopefully they'll keep listening.
I know I said that was the last question. I wonder if anybody else has a question, because I have one last one that I want to ask you. You have one, go for it. Actually, we're recording. We'd like to put this on YouTube, so if you don't mind just waiting for the mic.
So I had a question, because you were so close and kind of an insider to what was happening in the kind of hip-hop scene or community that was taking place. Maybe I'm fishing, I'm just very curious about this. But were there people from different parts of the city? Like, what neighborhoods are we talking about? Are we talking about Yusufabad, Banak, Nizamabad? Or if it's a collection of these, do people from different neighborhoods have different ideas about what's important to them or what to sing about? Or are there people who come from much more affluent families, or
Yeah.
is their music more different? I've made some observations, but I'm just assuming things. But it would be great to ask you if you were there.
Yeah, definitely. It's actually really interesting because I think because we all kind of met on the internet, it was fairly diverse, like the backgrounds of different people. I come from, middle-class family. We weren't that rich. I mean, they were, like, my father was a journalist, worked for the government, and my mom was a writer, didn't even earn money. So there were people who were a little bit more affluent, Bala Shahri, and there were people who were actually, lived in a less fortunate parts of Tehran, like, Junub Shahri. There were all parts, but the commonality was like we live in this society and we're not conforming in different ways. My thing was, I wanna, people are blind, and I wanna tell these stories, like, don't swim against the mainstream, things like that, like kind of, teenage stuff. Surush was like really into, Hitchcast was really into kind of pushing this really street kind of narrative. And some of these were acts, but they were really well done acts. And then there were people who were actually, from Manataq Mahroom, and they would talk about not having money and what is life, like that, like Reza Pishro was like that. So yeah, I think we were from all over, but Vanak was one of the places that we would meet up because it was really central. And Shahr Vanak, they had like a park over there, and we would meet there a lot. There was another park Gurbaga, that night mentioned, was in Sharq Gharb. I didn't like much going there, but that was like a more affluent part of the city, and I didn't feel like I belonged. Yeah. But I think it was fairly diverse relatively, and it's even more diverse now. You can see all kinds of people, like religious, non-religious, affluent, and more mahroom. Yeah.
So perhaps as a closing question, if I may, since we've been talking about sort of the government regulating or not restricting or banning the solo female voice. And just generally, we've talked about the government and its regulations. You've obviously released all your tracks, and you're rapping and in part singing solo. Have you had any interactions with government regulatory bodies, and is that something that you can talk about? And
so this is something I don't like talking about. There are different reasons for it. One of them is a lot of people use this kind of interactions and exaggerate them because Western audience likes it, and I just didn't want it to be a part of my narrative. Like, I thought it will distract from what I'm trying to do. But if it's interesting for you guys as academics and historians, I did have interactions with them, and I can tell you my interactions were, from what I understood, that Iranian intelligence agency is really incompetent. They're really not that scary, or they're not even that good at what they do. So I really didn't think, it didn't scare me as much. I think other people had I'd hear different things. My experience was, these guys don't know what they're doing.
Did those interactions ever change the course of what you were making or producing?
No, but part of it was I was lucky enough to I left kind of after that, after initial interactions, and when I returned for winter holidays, I had another interaction, and that was a little bit scary. But it didn't change. But then I left, and then I didn't care. So it didn't affect what I did, as far as I know. But who knows? Like, I didn't have any conscious effect anyway. Mm-hmm. But I think I've been always self-censoring, as Paola was saying. Like, there was always a sense of self-preservation, but not necessarily just from the Iranian governments, but from family, friends, society. Probably even more from society than the government. I lived in Bandar Anzali for a year because I had this notion that, Tehran is making me depressed. I'm going to go live in this small city and be happy. So I worked in a Bandar Anzali, which is a small port city in near Caspian Sea for a year after I graduated from school. And that was the worst year of my life because it's a small city and my landlord lived right upstairs.
That's
and
always a bad idea.
and I worked at the Mantaghi Azad, which is this economically free zone. So there are lots of factories there. I worked in a clothing factory as a designer, and in the factory it's just gossip. Everyone knows each other, and people constantly talking about each other, and it was so oppressive. I actually felt oppressed in there from people and their nosiness. In Tehran, yes, you had Gasht Ershad, but I didn't feel as oppressed, or at least you have that sense of freedom that the big city provides, which people don't care about each other because everyone has so much to worry about. In small cities, they don't. So I don't know how to get here, but society, yes, I think society. I think the society, censorship from society is a lot bigger factor. I didn't necessarily count government as a thing, but I also had a lot of self-confidence in the way I was underground. I thought I hid my name very well, and I didn't put out pictures that much. I still don't because I don't like it. And I also I released songs that maybe politically were too sensitive. I released them even with a different name, which Salomé is already a different name, but I even released them even in a more different name. So I would go even really more, so there's always a way. I mean, I put things out there, and I don't think the restrictions necessarily made me censor myself too much, because there's always a way to find there are cracks and you can flow through.
Great, thank you so much. Everybody, please join me in thanking Salomé and Messina for having me.
Thank you for having me.